it weren't for Bob Turner, we might never at Hakafa been involved in our work with refugees and asylum seekers. I wanted you to have a chance to see what makes him do what he does in this world. Hey, Bob Turner, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
It's really great to see you. What's new in beautiful, wonderful Highland Park?
Yeah. I know. It's freezing outside, man. Have you been outside?
Yeah, I just got back from walking Louise, and interestingly, it's one with the wind chill, and compared to yesterday, it's like summer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's about 20 feet, stops, turns around. I follow her, and she does her thing. And we go back in the house. She puts a little paw. It's too cold.
I get it. I get it. Here's a question I'd like to start with you, and it's similar to the question that I asked Alexandra Solomon when we started. She was our first one that we did here. I want you to think back to 10-year-old you, or 15-year-old, or even 20-year-old you. And as you were thinking back then and projecting out your life, did you ever think that you would be someday sitting here having this conversation?
Hardly. I was born in Gary. I grew up in Northwest Indiana. Um, I was part of the White Flight out of Gary when I was a little kid, and I didn't ever really had any aspirations. My dad worked in a body shop, my mom in a grocery store in Indiana, and I never really thought about what am I going to do? As I got through high school later on, nothing. I think the events that made my life were really events sort of serendipitously that kind of just caught me that right that moment, not unlike the refugee stuff with you. It just seemed like that was the thing for me. I could tell it at the time. I got very excited after that, and that's happened several times in my life to make events turn, some by choice, but it was a choice, sort of a trifecta of things going on.
So, do you sense that that the conscious choices we make, have a different kind of impact than the unconscious or the happenstance ones?
Yeah, I was with a guy a couple days ago. I told you I got lost out in middle Illinois, and he kept talking about the three or four choices he didn't make to go a different direction. Now he's a pretty successful guy, but carried with him the sort of heartache of maybe I could have, would have. In hindsight, pretty smart, but um, yeah. So I didn't really have until later on in life, clearer choices. So I just uh, I you know when my mom and dad got divorced, I called my dad and said, I want to come live with you. I was a 17-year-old kid at that time. Those kind of things, I don't know where that comes from. So,
And so you don't know where it comes from, but what did you learn from it? From not just from that one, but from those moments. Because what did it teach you about you?
uh, then I could trust that sense. I have it, and um, if I pay attention to it, it can, sort of a guiding light for me that I connect to something. And I'm lucky that way.
Hmm.
I'm very lucky.
Hmm. What do you mean?
Well, I have, a wonderful wife and great kids and grandkids and a great congregation and a relationship with you and all sorts of people. And, uh, it was an untraditional path for me. So, um, I could have been like this guy in the farmland that I saw over the weekend. Pretty unskilled, but got lucky, kind of thing. So yeah, I think I was really lucky. So
So do me a favor because you mentioned it twice now. I know what you're talking about. Just for 2 sentences, tell people what happened to you a couple days ago, just
uh,
really quickly.
so I had to go to Galesburg, Illinois, to get my vaccine, and I had to charge my car on the way there. When I charged it, I didn't charge it all the way. I misread the screen, and by doing that, when I got to Galesburg, I only had about 10 minutes of energy left in my car, and so I was stuck there overnight. so I plugged into the hotel on the outside because there was no plugs in that area. And so that it wasn't a Tesla problem or anything. It was my issue of planning. And, and so when you plug into a regular outlet, you only get a little bit of gas. And so just more than two sentences, but so then it took, because I went to the next plug in the morning with a little bit of gas, and it was the wrong kind of plug, and only I would have had to have been towed, and the police came and tried to help me, and only through strangers coming around to say, hey, I got a plug, I'll take you to my house, you can plug in. And I did that, and had I went to his business, and then I had lunch with him, and met his family, all that stuff. And it was just, over the weekend, I don't know if you know the weather there, but the roads were almost shut down on
Yeah.
the ones I traveled back in those, trying to get from plug to plug. So yeah, it sort of renewed my faith in humanity, and this kind of serendipitous luck stuff, if you will. So
Prior to me being at the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, I spent an entire 8 weeks of my life out of college being a book salesman to libraries. I sold nonfiction books to libraries, and my territory was Northern Illinois and all of Wisconsin. So in those 8 weeks, I spent a lot of time in the back roads of Northern Illinois, and I appreciate. I came to at the same time hate Illinois for the boring, flat lack of anything to look at. It makes Indiana look pretty, and at the same time appreciate those small nooks and the humanity in those small nooks. And that's what I'm hearing you talk about.
this guy that came up to me was the mayor of the next town for 8 years. And so we went to lunch, and, he knows everybody in the place, right? And just fun to see that small town view, and how well connected that community was. And then, giving and forgiving for
Yeah.
me. So,
Okay, so I'm going to ask my question again, and I want you to take it a different way. My first question: you more than anyone I know have been. You are my journeyman, and what I mean by that is that you've been on a real journey, and you've been on a conscious journey, and you've been on a real spiritual, soulful journey. So I want to ask the question again on that level, not on the CV level, but on that spirit soul level. Um, is that looking back when you were your 15 or 20-year-old self to where you are now, on that level, could you imagine yourself in the space that you're occupying in terms of a soulful spiritual person? And what does that mean to you?
yeah, I think of it, I would translate that into a human thing. This is all happens for me with other humans. Um, all of this stuff. I became a very successful sales guy, who didn't know how to sell, and it was just people taking me under their wing, um, and all this stuff. So it really had to do with connections to others, and to sort of move from one group to another group to another group. A friend of mine was having a Memorial Day party, and had a few people over, and one of those few people that came in the door was my future wife. Just from one friend to another, um, kind of thing. So the soulful piece for me is just that. It's I have great help in this congregation from 40 or 50 people, to help others. And it wasn't that I did something special. I just asked if anybody wanted to help. And then all these people show up, for years, right? We've been doing that for about 5 years, I think. So I think the soulful stuff, it really comes out, and I see it in our volunteers and mentors, and how important it is, how touching it is for them, how important it is to care for somebody else.
Yeah. So when you think of solar spirit, that's what you think of in relationship to others?
Yeah, it's really a human thing. Not that plants and animals may or may not have that. It's just my experience with humans. So yeah.
Okay. So you've also, I mean, I'm gonna go at this again. I'm just because I um, Look, you and I have spent a lot of time talking over the past number of years. We've taken lots of walks. We've challenged each other on a lot of different things.
Mm.
And one of the places where you push me a lot, all right? Well, not really push me. Let me take the word isn't push. You push me in other places in great kind of ways, and I love you for that. And I don't know if you knew that, but I do. Okay. But you've also gone on this journey of understanding yourself as a man and understanding yourself and the soulfulness that's tied up into that and what it means to occupy your space. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think, Bruce, it comes from the way I got there, I guess, is the way it was really through therapy and the training or education on how to remove day-to-day normal human angst around things, and having been able to remove that stuff one way or another, so I'm not anxious about this, or I'm not, you know reverberating on an issue that doesn't matter. All of those things got sort of settled for me, and I became, I don't know, more comfortable with myself, more pure in what I was trying to do, and I was able to see what was important for me. And then these things come along, these events come along that I don't see in I was working with my dad in a body shop. I started a body shop in Indiana when I was 17, and then 10 years later, some guy walks in with a computerized estimate, and I found out who made that stuff. It was unbeknownst to any of us at that time, especially in rural Indiana. And I went on to a career with a large company for a long time after that. And so I think it was just paying attention, or being, just being fortunate. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, and stuff came along, and people. And I guess I don't have a good explanation for how and why. Um,
So I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
no, no, go on.
What I what I hear you saying in that answer, especially towards the beginning of it, has to deal with how about expectation upon men in our society, and if I can even put a male toxicity.
Yeah.
And do you think so? Were you speaking to that? I'm not trying to get into your personal weeds, but just in this, were you talking about, trying to come to terms with that inside yourself? And by extension, do you still see that same type of, if you would call it toxicity, still playing itself out today in America?
It's hard to separate sort of the good from the bad, and and the effects of drugs, alcohol, those things in our society, which certainly affect men in a strong way. I think most of us, all of us, look for something to help us, and it can be an unhealthy thing or a healthy thing, and yeah, depending on how educated we are, how many other people we know that we can talk about it with, and if we can pursue that long enough and hard enough. I just found it to be great education and therapy itself, and fun and interesting. And most people find the reverse of that, but um, um, yeah, that allowed me to put aside the things I grew up with and learned that weren't so good. They were not the most educated ideas of how to raise and be. So that always helped me. And the Jewish life is part of that for me. To me, it's a more educated, um, connected way in our society. Still, for me, is a shining star. I converted, you converted me, right?
Oh no, you converted yourself. I just had the honor of being there to facilitate it.
Which was great. We talk about rituals, and this is part of it. Rituals being a really important part of happiness, and so all of that, I thought, you know, it's helpful for me. All those little things.
So, looking at, we have sons that are the same age. And so do you see, as much as you've tried to deconstruct it within yourself, that maleness, however you, and again, we don't have to completely lose the Y chromosome. We can't, right? But as you look, as you see how we stand, and I'm going to put both of us in this, right, towards our sons. What about, do you see with your son some of that stuff that you saw in yourself, or do you see that he's got more tools to deal with it, or even though he has more tools to deal with it, he still deals with it, still speak to that a little bit.
I think the environment's much more intense in good and bad ways, and there's a lot more to handle. And he's, I think, both of our sons capable of handling that, or have learned to handle all this influx of media and phones and information and stuff, and they can get any question answered and beyond, in a second. Um, and we as a society, I don't think have found a way to manage that well yet. So it's kind of all open, not necessarily very good or or segmented. Um, so I can see, a brightness in both our boys. That they have their own distinct brightness, and my take is they'll find their own distinct path. It won't be your path or my path, right? But they have to
Darn
figure.
them.
What's that?
I said darn them for not
Yeah,
following the path we set out for them.
I think part of the human condition for guys is, we want our sons to be just like us, maybe a little bit better, but just the same, do what we did. And it's not human nature, right? So
Yeah.
human nature is they go off on their own, they do their own thing, especially at this 23-year-old age, right? Both great guys, and they'll do well. We know they'll do really well
I'm holding to that.
in their own way, in their own time. You think where you were. What were you doing when you were 23?
I was getting married to Rona and selling books in Toluca, Illinois.
Oh, and you thought you'd be here one day?
There you go. There's the question. I was waiting for you to give it back to me. Okay, so you talked about ritual being important. I want to come back to that. First, talk to me about if ritual is important to you, why it's important to you, which ones are important to you, and is it important? This is way too many. And is it important in general uh, to men?
It's I think the why is because at least for me, it can be a very settling, calming, quiet uh, pathway. The part you do at the end of high holidays and pass around the scents, and we're all very close together. That doesn't happen except in that place in that time, and it's a very special time. And so those kind of heartfelt, slow, calm uh, rituals that we can entertain helps us get away. I think helps us get away from the noise and the anxiety and the tough lives we live sometimes. And and to have our boys sometimes exposed to those, especially in earlier ages, gives them a quiet place. Sometimes it begins to help their soul, and you know, they have to deal with all sorts of things. Grief is part of their lives. With losing a boy here a year ago this week, and um, how do we teach them? How do we help them with grief and loss? And because they don't get that anyplace else, right? Um, so
When I have a parent that talks to me about their child when they become a bar bat b'nai mitzvah, that they want to make it meaningful for them. Out of I'm making this number up, 100 parents that have talked to me about that, 99 of them have been women, mothers.
well,
Right. So whatever the number is, whether it's 50 or 100 or whatever the number is, and I'm even going back to my 3 years before in New Jersey,
yeah,
I have had one father talk to me about wanting that ritual to mean something. Now, that's not an indictment of men. That's a way of saying, Bob, why did it matter so much to you? When it came to the bar mitzvah, it really meant something to you. Why?
I thought there ought to be a path in society, not just in religion, where, and there is in many societies, right, a coming of age ritual. Um, and I thought, well, here, I'm new to Judaism, and here we go. This is because they've been around a long time, right? Um, and so we wound up getting adult men, family, friends around him for an evening, each one of them telling a little story about what they knew about him when he was growing up. And I don't hear much about that, but some of the guys liked it. I think it's just lack of exposure, lack of understanding. We were very macho, Super Bowl men kind of society, to its own detriment, kind of thing. So it's harder to find. Even for me, find people like you and others that can go down a little different path, have kind of different conversations, um, and be straight up about it. Be honest. We're all humans. We all have human conditions and do what we do. And the kids at that age need help. And where do they go? It's hard to find. So I thought the ritual around coming of age and the bar mitzvah could help him get started on that path. Here's men who can help him. They're close, and we as a species, we've been around tribes for thousands of years. This stuff we're doing now has not been around very long.
So what you did was really powerful, right? And you said you don't know the impact it had on him.
Yeah, I don't hear about it. I never heard about it much. So
what about the impact it had on you and the other men that were in the room?
It was what I wanted, and it was. Some of the men still talk about it, and it was just a time to get together and be quiet and light some candles and be soft with one another. And
did you do it downstairs in your main living area?
yes,
that's really a special space. I mean, we've had a number of Shiva minions and different stuff in that space. It's really a to call it holy is too strong of a word, but holy moments have happened there, and there's something about that space.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So you came to me 6 years ago, give or take, because of what?
You tell me.
You tell me what happened that you came to me and we had coffee and now we're 40 people later. I mean, we're not going to retell the story over and over again, but I want to hear from you what happened to you 6 years ago that you felt the need to pick up the phone or email and say, can we talk?
Well, it was a story about, not to tell the story, but it was a story about Syrians being blown out of their own country, and then other countries around it. And New York Times paper on that Sunday, we had coffee, talked about. I had a large picture of a boat crossing the Mediterranean with 300 refugees on it, with no sail, no motor, and it was just sitting in the water when they took that photo. And then I asked you, what did I ask you?
You tell me. I'm not going to tell the story. I want you to tell the story.
Well, Bruce, what do we do? This is a tragedy, right? And what do we do? So you said, go see if we can help one family, and I sent an email out to the congregation, and 4 or 5 people showed up, and
I had dozens of people, making that number up again, quite a few, and I'm not the only one when I say that, come to me saying, oh my God, this is so horrible. What do we do?
Yeah.
Meaning it either figuratively or actually. But what motivated you to actually, I mean, it wasn't just a conversation, because 2 days later you were like, I found blah blah blah, and before I know it, you're standing up on a Sunday, and before I know it, there's a group of people that were looking for somebody to take it. It's the Nachshon story of crossing the Red Sea, that Moses held up his staff, but no one jumped in. It wasn't until the first guy jumped in that the sea parted.
Yeah.
So what was that in you that said, I'm not this time just going to ask the question? And again, this isn't an indictment of anyone else.
Yeah.
I'm asking you about you.
well, again, it wasn't, it was just the same kind of thing. I didn't have a future vision plan, strategy, any of that for that time. I just thought, here's humans and nobody, it looks like nobody's thinking, caring about them, and they weren't. And this idea of going to get one was the only way to break through. I think I couldn't say 50 or 100 or this boatload, but could we figure out how to do one? And that that opened the door. That really for me made it doable. And so that's what happened.
So you really care about other people. You keep coming back to that human thing. Why?
Um, there was something not right about the people in the boat and being cared for that way or not cared for that way, and something in me says that's not okay. I have to fix that, and so that's what happened to me. I tried to fix the situation or help or something,
Hmm.
and fortunately, I got Allison and on and on and on. People showing up saying I'll help, um, and we didn't know what to do or how to do it. All we heard was in the papers, more Syrian refugees at that time, how that got started, and then it wasn't too hard after that to figure it out. So
How did it make you feel when we got the first family and we held up the sign that says Hakafa, which in Swahili means the devil?
it was so exciting. Allison still talks about going to the airport, to pick up people. Um, and people came out of the woodwork for Akafa. I never knew all these people, and so we just got for a while there. We had more volunteers than we had refugees to care for, and then that sort of caught up. But to see Renovat and family with 4 girls show up at O'Hare, not speaking the language, having plastic bags full of clothes. What a crazy thing it was. I don't even know if I can describe it. That here these people are with babies wrapped under their coats like they do at home, coming here with very little support, from almost no support from our government.
Well, finding out when they get to the plane where they're going and having no concept of what that means in the middle of the winter, right?
We did we had 2 of our teenagers, the refugees, talk to Sunday school yesterday, and I found out, I didn't realize that these 2 teenagers in their family never saw a white person till they got in Chicago at the airport. Never seen, and I'd heard that before from others. So
Yeah. So you've really worked hard to stay in touch with as many of the families as possible. Why?
yeah, because I think I wouldn't want to be stranded here by myself and not have anybody that cared about me. And there's something about some of these people when I see them on the day they land here or soon afterwards, that I become, and Allison and the other volunteers become entrusted. That it's meaningful for them. They realize how meaningful it is, weeks or months later, that somebody showed up to help me when there would have been no one.
And what do you get out of it?
Oh, I get to learn. One of the things is I get to learn about who these people are and the culture. And what I found out is, they have the same kind of conversations. They're just in a different language. But really, they talk about the same stuff that we do. And, I get to see them grow. They're sort of kids for me now at my age. But, they go through different jobs. They get a little better job, They'll get a little better apartment. Maybe they'll some of them have applied and to go to college. Some of them are in college. Some of them are in their second year. And so you have all these lives that I know about now. Not just getting resettled, but beyond that, they're prosperous beyond their own capabilities because of volunteers here.
Have you noticed a struggle with any of them being taken out of their context? Now look, they were thrusted out of their context. Even in the refugee camp, which was disorienting, they were still able to be collective with tribesmen, clansmen, people from their places to be dropped in the middle of Chicago, coming largely from Africa, though not only. Also, we've had some from the Middle East and other places. Have you found any of the folks that you've been in a relationship with also struggling with this idea of ritual of old? How they can maintain a tie? Do they want a tie to that aspect of themselves? And what do they do?
Probably depends a little bit on their age. And I don't really see it except they keep their own food. They eat the same food generally. We try to give them spaghetti and pasta, and they don't know what it is, kind of thing. So we have some struggles trying to get some of them to learn English or speak English at home, kind of thing. So they hang on to those things because I've been told that's part of their motherland and they want to stay. So so the parents don't want to learn new language. Um, I think about the Selvins, the asylum seekers we have that they just want to keep doing what they're doing, but they're in a foreign land. So it's a challenge. I don't think they realize for a long time that they're not going back. They can't go back, right? They're here, and some of them have made their own communities. The refugees that are attached to our congregation, uh, talk and see one another, right? They connect themselves somehow or another. So I think it's tough. They keep the same, at least the moms keep the same kind of dress sometimes, African dress. It's very bright colors and beautiful. Um,
So you think they're going to make it by and large? And how
uh,
do you define make it?
so there's no in our society. There's really no way to help them. It's tough enough to get a job in our society, but to go from very, you know, cleaning jobs of different sorts. Some of them are still there 3 or 4 years later in cleaning jobs, and some of them are not. It, one of the only ways I see is through education, formal education, but that doesn't always work either. So uh, there's no certain path.
So, there's always going to be, this sounds so heavy. There's always going to be boats of people somewhere.
Yeah, we need a bigger congregation. So
That's not what I was thinking. All right. But that's really funny. Why do you, um, where do you see all of this going with the refugee stuff in the world? What's your feel? And again, you're not a maybe you are an expert. I don't want to assume that you're not an expert, but I'm not looking for that. In your kishkas, your gut, what is your work with the refugees say about the issue of refugees in the world? Where do you think this is going, or where can it go, and what do you hope for?
I think we're, with Biden now, we're better off. All right. But many countries were not. There's many more refugees now than there were last year, or the year before. So it's going to continue with the dictatorships and the kings and whatnot. So it's getting worse. At the same time, the US can certainly do a better job. I think the way it happened, because it was kind of fleeing countries and boats going out, and in the Syrian example, all that was kind of an explosion. So people then started to push back right away, rather than what migration has been for decades, right? Um, so, my hope is that we'll become more friendly to one another and supportive of one another, and make our laws adapt for that, and some of the entities like the Jewish community push for that. Highest pushes for that. We push for that. Uh,
So is that when you say that hope, is that a Pollyanna-ish hope, or is that your genuine Kishka's hope?
um, well, we see, mostly through commerce, that generally the planet, the countries are getting more prosperous slowly, and that goes along with more democratic countries. So that's my hope. It's going in the right direction. The arc is okay.
So you mentioned it. You decided to become Jewish how many years ago now? 10, 12, 8,
Uh,
14, 60? I don't remember. How many years ago was that?
to 8 or 9 was my guess.
Yeah, how's that been for you?
It's it's. I think just think how to answer that. How's it? Well, it's important to me for my son and my wife, and it's important to have a good community. I think that's part of the male issue as well, is to have connections, good connections, and I continue to see females leading the way with this stuff, and that's a good thing as long as somebody leads. And so yeah, I know religion overall is becoming less popular, but I think Judaism is the exception. So
Yeah, so when you think of the Judaism for you, besides that human to human, and maybe that's enough, and I don't mean to minimize it, what is your Judaism?
I think this doing for and with one another, helping the stranger, understanding it better. As crazy as my wife's family is, they're fun and loving and caring, and it's nothing like I ever had. It's really wonderful, and it's really wonderful stuff. Almost, I could tell you stories about volunteers that help bend over backwards. I always remember pulling up at Renabout's apartment, and Sally's in the alleyway handing out food. I don't even know she knows about these refugees, right?
But that's Sally.
Yeah,
Sally knew about them before they knew about themselves. That's just how Sally is, right? Keep going. I'm sorry.
yeah. I don't. I hate to leave somebody out because there's a long list of very helpful people, but uh, yeah, I don't know.
You've retired now.
Yeah,
How's that feel?
I love it. I love it. It's freedom. It's choice for me, luckily, and um, I love it. I love not working, and
But I mean, you're working in different ways, right?
uh,
And go on.
I was just going to say, I'm a year or so into it. I'm just experimenting with, I've taken some classes and done some other volunteering and whatnot. So I'm just feeling my way around what fits for me. A friend of mine just did an art appreciation class. I did that. So.
Nothing like a good pandemic to kick off a retirement, huh? You you said you were in sales your entire life. Does that fit with your personality? Was that contrary to your personality? What and why'd you stay in it?
Yeah, it was really exciting for me in the beginning. I wasn't a salesperson; I was a teacher, kind of thing, and I had the background for it in the world I was in. So they moved me into sales because I was, I don't know, good at something, or they needed somebody. But it wound up to be kind of an anti-sales position because I was selling to very large corporations, and I was selling. My employer was a very large corporation, so those are individual relationships, one on one, over and over and over again on both sides, and that's perfect for me. I liked all the connections, and I liked the I can I got a view from an organization that the people in it don't have, right? How do they compare to another organization stuff? And then in some organizations I would travel around, meet everybody, and I would know more people or something than the ones in it, and therefore I was sort of a conduit for the organization in a helpful way. And these sales took a year or two, kind of thing. So it really was all relationship based.
Hmm. Are you still in touch with any of them?
Some of my old buddies in different organizations, and some of my clients and stuff. So
Because that's interesting to me is that I've never considered that. What does it mean to develop a relationship that intimately with someone, even though it's professional, and then to move on? Is it just c'est la vie, or is there a sense of loss or a sense of gain?
um, I think it's c'est la vie. I think you have that time and then it's over, and some stay, but most don't, we solve a problem. It was really problem solver.
Hmm. Got a couple more questions for you. We've talked a lot about Dylan, and I don't want, you've got a daughter too, and you've got grandkids with your daughter. When your daughter sees you, what does she see?
Well, I got older. I'm very attached to my granddaughters and my daughter, so I think it's just still a good model for her, because she can kind of go off in her own way sometimes and do her own things and kind of thing, and had her own struggles. So hopefully, I'm aged in better wine nowadays, and hopefully for both my children, you know, they'll see that I did okay, more than okay, and I have a good lifestyle and a great marriage and all that. So.
Well, that was my next question. We haven't talked much about your wife. When she looks at you, what does she see?
Um, I don't know. You have to ask her. I don't know what
Oh, come
she's.
on. You project it out. Go ahead. What does she see?
Um, so we just had our 25th in October, and um, yeah, I think we're both very happy. We found each other later in life, and um, I think we're sort of exactly the same about being enthusiastic about being with one another, and that's really nice.
Hmm. What has COVID done for you?
When I retired, I didn't want to do anything. I was very busy and had a lot of stress in my old jobs and stuff. So it really allowed me a good excuse to not do anything. I golfed a lot over the summer and pick and choose a little bit what I did. But I'm okay not having a lot of stuff to do. I did that for a long, long time, and so I wasn't so busy. And I'm taking yoga classes and Tai Chi classes and working out and trying to get my health better. And so it's really very healthy for me.
Good. You still feel that way?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I get to do whatever I want to do, right? I have freedom of choice, which is, you know, I'm very fortunate.
Last question. You haven't jabbed at me in a long time, and I don't say that in a negative kind of way. You're one of my jabbers. Why? Where's the jabbing been? Is it a COVID thing? Is it a retirement thing? Is it a what? Where? It's just answer.
Well, I hope I didn't hurt your feelings. I didn't not to jab you. I didn't want to be jabbing you.
No, 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 no. I say that with love. No, 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 no. There's a difference between digging and jabbing. No, no, no. I don't mean that in any kind of way. If it was a way of hurting my feelings, I never would have asked you on a podcast that 20 people are going to watch. Right? I mean, you've been somebody in my life that every so often just goes, "Hey, what's this about?" Or "Why aren't you thinking about this?" Or "Did you think about this?" Or, and that's you. And I even sounded like you just now when I said that. Where's that been? Why'd that stop?
Um, I don't have a good reason. I don't have a good reason. Uh, I won't let it happen again. I did. I did want to celebrate your. Was it? Tell me, I forgot.
We're not
20.
gonna no, we're not gonna talk about that. Anyhow, yeah, that wasn't gonna happen.
Um, so I was disappointed we couldn't pull that off at the time. Particular ritual and celebration for you. Um,
No. The
uh,
only way we would ever celebrate me being here any number of years is if we would celebrate everybody being here any number of years because we're all in this together.
okay, well, maybe we do that. That's the way to go.
That's what
Uh,
we were talking about, and then the pandemic hit.
yeah. Well, I think I've understood more. Right in the beginning, I was like, well, "What are you doing? Why are you doing?" And then I got to learn those things. So I learned them at home. I learned them from you, and I can't wait to get back to see you more. So
Okay, one more last question.
wait, did you take your have you had your vaccine? Oh, you
I
did,
had
right?
I had the first one. I got the second one coming up in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. Um, where do you hope to see with all the work in the spaces you occupy? Because you've asked me this question, where do you hope to see Haka 5 years down the road?
Yeah, I think I changed my opinion a few times on it. I think if we move in the direction we're moving, we have been for a while, it's just really just like yesterday's congregation call, caring, everybody participates, um, respectfully, nicely, lovingly, and move in that direction, will be more than fine.
Hmm. Bob, thanks for taking the time. It's good to see you.
You too. Thank you, Bruce.
Hey, that's it. We'll see you next time, everyone.